Y'all, it's only 90 degrees. Ah, I don't have my tabs today. Damn it. I need to just keep a packet of tabs in my little console thing. I don't have them today. Got my nails done, finally, and I found a nail tech that I love, finally! Only took me a couple years, but I love her. She's literally a practitioner as well, and we bonded over, like, altars and stuff. Oh shit, hold on, it's gonna buffer. Let me turn off my Bluetooth real quick. Okay, I'm back. Thank you. Oh, that's right. We're reading a stressful part of the book. It's not fun. We're not reading anything, well, like, it's fun, but, like, it's not, because it's like, stressful. And I'm gonna try not to say anything mean about any fictional character, because TikTok denied my appeal, because they said that I was indeed bullying, but I wasn't. It was a fictional character, but so we're gonna be nice in this house now. We're gonna be nice, and we're not gonna say any negative things about people that are not real anymore, because I'm not trying to get my lives taken away. So yeah, we're gonna be nice to all the fictional characters, even Darrow. We're gonna be nice to him. Anyway. We're reading, I think, 14 through 18 today, which is supposed to be stressful. I've said a lot more mean things about, like, other characters, like Tamlin, and, whatever. We're gonna be nice now. Anyway, so, yeah, let's get started. We're starting on chapter 14. My allergies are acting up, so if I sound weird, that's why. So yeah, thank you for the block, Sarah. Clothed in battle black from head to toe, Adi and Ash River kept to the shadows of the street across from the temple and watched his cousin scale the building beside him. They'd already secured passage on a ship for tomorrow morning, along with another messenger ship to sail to Wendelin, bearing letters beseeching the Ash Rivers for aid and signed by both Aelin and Adian himself. Because what they'd learned today... He'd been to Ilium enough times over the past decade to know his way around. Usually, he and his bane had camped outside the town walls and enjoyed themselves so thoroughly at the taverns that he'd wound up puking in his own helmet the next morning. A far cry from the stunned silence as he and Aelin had walked down the pale, dusty streets disguised and unsociable. And all those visits to the town, he'd never imagined traversing these streets with his queen, or that her face would be so grave as she took in the frightened, unhappy people, the scars of war. No flowers thrown in their path, no trumpets singing their return, just the crash of the sea, the howl of the wind, and the beating sun overhead, and the rage rippling off Aelin at the sight of the soldiers stationed around the town. All strangers were watched enough that they'd had to be careful about securing their ship. To the town, the world, they'd be boarding the Summer Lady at mid-morning, heading north to Suria. But they would instead be sneaking onto the Windsinger just before sunrise to sail south come dawn. They'd paid in gold for the captain's silence. And for his information, they had been about to leave the man's cabin when he'd said, "My brother is a merchant. He specializes in goods from distant lands. He brought me news last week that ships were spotted rallying along the western coast of the Fey territory." Aelin had asked, "To sail here?" At the same time, Adian had demanded, "How many ships?" 50. All warships, the captain had said, looking them over carefully, no doubt assuming they were agents of one of the many crowns at play in this war. An army of Fey warriors camped on the beach beyond. They seemed to be waiting for the order to sail. The news would likely spread fast, panic the people. Adian had made a note to send warning to his second to brace the bane for it and counter any wild rumors. Aelin's face had gone a bit bloodless, and he'd braced a steadying hand between her shoulder blades, but she had only stood straighter at his touch and asked the captain, "Did your brother get the sense that Queen Maeve had allied with Morath, or that she's coming to assist Terrason?" "Neither," the captain had cut in. "He was only sailing past, though if the Armada was out like that, I doubt it was secret. We know nothing else. Perhaps the ships were for another war." His queen's face yielded nothing in the dimness of her hood. Adian made his to do the same, except her face had remained like that the entire walk back, and in the hours since, when they'd honed their weapons and then slipped back onto the streets under cover of darkness. If Maeve was indeed rallying an army to stand against them, Aelin paused atop the roof, Goldrin's bright hilt wrapped in cloth to hide its gleaming, and Adian glanced between her shadowy figure and the Ardalan watch patrolling the temple walls mere feet below. But his cousin turned her head toward the nearby ocean, as if she could see all the way to Maeve and her awaiting fleet. If the immortal bitch allied with Morath, surely Maeve would not be so stupid. Perhaps the two dark rulers would destroy each other in their bid for power, and likely destroy this continent in the process. But a dark king and a dark queen united against the Firebringer. They had to act quickly, cut off one snake's head before dealing with the other. Cloth on skin hissed, and Adian glanced at where Lysandra waited behind him, on the lookout for Aelin's signal. She was in her traveling clothes, a bit worn and dirty. She'd been reading an ancient-looking book all afternoon. Forgotten Creatures of the Deep, or whatever it had been called. A smile tugged at his lips as he wondered whether she'd borrowed or stolen the title. The lady looked to where Aelin still stood on the roof, no more than a shadow. Lysandra cleared her throat a bit and said too softly for anyone to hear, either the queen or the soldiers across the street. She's accepted Darrow's decree too calmly. I'd hardly call any of this calm, but he knew what the shifter meant. Since Rowan had gone, since word of Rifthold's fall had arrived, Aelin had been half present, distant. Lysandra's pale green eyes pinned him to the spot. It's the calm before the storm, Adian. Every one of his predatory instincts perked. Lysandra's eyes again drifted to Aelin's lithe figure. A storm is coming, a great storm. Not the forces lurking in Morath, not Darrow plotting in Orinth or Maeve assembling her armada, but the woman on the roof, hands braced on the edge as she crouched down. You're not frightened of... He couldn't say the rest. He'd somehow grown accustomed to having the shifter guard Aelin's back, had found the idea mighty appealing. Rowan at her right, Adian at her left, Lysandra at her back. Nothing and no one would get to their queen. No, never, Lysandra said. Something eased in his chest. But the more I think about it, the more it seems like this was all planned, laid out long ago. Erwin had decades before Aelin was born to strike, decades during which no one with her powers, or Dorian's powers, existed to challenge him. Yet, as fate or fortune would have it, he moves now, at a time when a Firebringer walks the earth. What are you getting at? He'd considered all of this before, during those long watches on the road. It was all horrifying, impossible, but so much of their lives defied logic or normalcy. The shifter next to him proved that. Morath is unleashing its horrors, Lysandra said. Maeve stirs across the sea. Two goddesses walk hand in hand with Aelin. More than that, Mala and Deanna have watched over her the entirety of her life. But perhaps it wasn't watching. Perhaps it was shaping, so they might one day unleash her too. And I wonder if the gods have weighed the costs of that storm and deemed the casualties worth it. A chill snaked down his spine. Lysandra went on, so quietly that Adian wondered if she feared the queen hearing. But those gods... Not the queen hearing, sorry, but those gods. We have yet to see the full extent of Erwin's darkness, and I think we have yet to see the full extent of Aelin's fire. She's not some unwitting pawn. He'd defy the gods, find a way to slaughter them if they threatened Aelin, if they deemed these lands a worthy sacrifice to defeat the Dark King. Is it really that hard for you to just agree with me for once? I never disagree. You always have an answer to everything. She shook her head. It's insufferable. Adian grinned. Good to know I'm finally getting under your skin. Or is it skins? That's staggeringly? Yeah. Beautiful face turned positively wicked. Careful, Adian. I bite. Adian leaned in a bit closer. He knew there were lines with Lysandra, knew there were boundaries he wouldn't cross, wouldn't push at, not after what she'd endured since childhood, not after she'd regained her freedom, not after what he'd been through too. Even if he hadn't yet told Aelin about it, how could he? How could he explain what had been done to him, what he'd been forced to do in those early years of conquest? But flirting with Lysandra was harmless, for both him and the shifter, and gods, it was good to talk to her more than a minute between forms. So he snapped his teeth at her and said, "Good thing I know how to make women purr." Okay. I need them to be together. Yeah. I need it. She laughed softly, but the sound died as she looked toward their queen again, the sea breeze shifting her dark silken hair. Any minute now, she warned him. Adian didn't give a shit what Darrow thought, what he sneered about. Lysandra had saved his life, had fought for their queen, and put everything on the line, including her ward, to rescue him from execution and reunite him with Aelin. He'd seen how often the shifter's eyes had darted between them the first few days, as if she could see Evangeline with Murtaugh and Ren. He knew even now part of her remained with the girl, just as part of Aelin remained with Rowan. He wondered if he'd ever feel it, that degree of love. For Aelin, yes, but it was a part of him, as his limbs were a part of him. It had never been a choice, as Lysandra's selflessness with that little girl had been, as Rowan and Aelin had chosen each other. Perhaps it was stupid to consider given what he'd been trained to do and what awaited them in Morath, but he'd never tell her this in 1,000 years. But looking at Aelin and Rowan, he sometimes envied them. He didn't even want to think about what else Darrow had implied, that a union between Wendelin and Terracin had been attempted over 10 years ago, with marriage between him and Aelin the asking price, only to be rejected by their kin across the sea. He loved his cousin, but thought of touching her like that made his stomach turn. He had a feeling she returned the sentiment. She hadn't shown him the letter she'd written to Wendelin. It hadn't occurred to him until now to ask to see it. Adian stared up at the lone figure before the vast dark sea, and realized he didn't know. He didn't want to know. He was a general, a warrior honed by blood and rage and loss. He had seen and done things that still drew him from his sleep, night after night, but he did not want to know. Not yet. Lysandra said, "We should leave before dawn. I don't like the smell of this place." He inclined his head toward the 50 soldiers camped inside the temple walls. Obviously. But before he could speak, blue flames sparked at Aelin's fingertips. The signal. Lysandra shifted into a ghost leopard, and Adian faded into the shadows as she loosed a roar that set the nearby homes tumbling awake. People spilled out of their doors just as the soldiers threw open the gates to the temple to see what the commotion was about. Aelin was off the roof in a few nimble maneuvers, landing with feline grace as the soldiers shoved into the street, weapons out and eyes wide. Those eyes grew wider as Lysandra slunk up beside Aelin, snarling, as Adian fell into step on the other side. Together they pulled off their hoods. Someone gasped behind them. Not at their golden hair, their faces, but at the hand wreathed in blue flame as Aelin lifted it above her head and said to the soldiers, pointing crossbows at them, "Get the hell out of my temple." The soldiers blinked. One of the townsfolk behind them began weeping as a crown of fire appeared atop Aelin's hair, as the cloth smothering Goldrin burned away and the ruby glowed blood red. Adian smiled at the Artelanian bastards, unhooked his shield from across his back and said, "My lady gives you a choice. Leave now, or never leave at all." The soldiers exchanged glances. The flame around Aelin's head burned brighter, a beacon in the dark. Symbols have power indeed. There she was, crowned in flame, a bastion against the gathered night. So Adian... I don't know how to say that word. Sorry if I said that word wrong. So Adian drew the sword of Orinth from its sheath along his spine. Someone cried out at the sight of that ancient, mighty blade. More and more soldiers filled the open temple courtyard beyond the gate, and some dropped their weapons outright, lifting their hands, backing away. "You bleeding cowards," a soldier snarled, shoving to the front, a commander from the decorations on his red and gold uniform. Human, no black rings on any of them. His lip curled as he beheld Adian, the shield and sword he held angled and ready for bloodletting. "The wolf of the north," the sneer deepened, "and the fire-breathing bitch herself." Aelin, to her credit, only looked bored. She said one last time to the human soldiers gathering there, shifting on their feet, "Live or die, it's your choice, but make it now. Don't listen to the bitch," the commander snapped. "Simple parlor tricks," Lord Mia said. Lord Mia. We've heard that name before. I don't remember who he is, though. Five more soldiers dropped their weapons and ran, outright sprinted into the streets. "Anyone else?" Aelin asked softly. 35 soldiers remained, weapons out, faces hard. Adian had fought against and alongside such men. Aelin looked to him in question. Adian nodded. The commander had his claws in them. They would only retreat when the man did. "Come on, then. Let's see what you have to offer," the commander taunted. "I've got a lovely farmer's daughter I want to finish." As if she were blowing out a candle, Aelin exhaled a breath toward the man. First the commander went quiet, as if every thought, every feeling had halted. Then his body seemed to stiffen, like he'd been turned to stone, and for a heartbeat Aedion thought the man had been turned to stone as his skin, his Ardalanian uniform, turned varying shades of gray. The fuck did she do? But as the sea breeze brushed past, and the man simply fell apart into nothing but ashes, Aedion realized with no small amount of shock what she had done. She'd burned him alive, from the inside out. Someone screamed. Aelin merely said, "I warned you." A few soldiers now bolted, but most held their ground, hate and disgust shining in their eyes at the magic, at his queen, at him. And Aedion smiled like the wolf he was as he lifted the sword of Orinth and unleashed himself upon the line of soldiers raising weapons on the left, Lysandra lunging to the right with a guttural snarl, and Aelin rained down flames of gold and ruby upon the world. Damn! They took back the temple in 20 minutes. It was only 10 before they had control of it, the soldiers either dead or, if they'd surrendered, hauled to the town dungeon by the men and women who had joined the fight. The other 10 minutes were spent scouring the place for any ambushers, but they found only their trappings and refuse, and the side of the temple in such disrepair, the sacred walls carved with the names of Ardalanian brutes, the ancient urns of never-ending fire extinguished or used for chamber pots. Aelin had let them all see when she sent a raising fire through the place, gobbling up any trace of those soldiers, removing years of dirt and dust and gold droppings to reveal the glorious, ancient carvings beneath, etched into every pillar and step and wall. The temple complex comprised 3 buildings around a massive courtyard: the archives, the residence for the long-dead priestesses, and the temple proper, where the ancient rock was held. It was in the archives, the most defensible area by far, that she left Aedion and Lysandra to find anything suitable for bedding, a wall of flame now encompassing the entire site. Aedion's eyes still shone with the thrill of battle when she claimed she wanted a moment alone by the rock. He'd fought beautifully, and she'd made sure to leave some men alive for him to take down. She was not the only symbol here tonight, not the only one watched. And as for the shifter who had ripped into those soldiers with such feral savagery, Aelin left her again in falcon form, perched on a rotting beam in the cavernous archives, staring at the enormous rendering of a sea dragon carved into the floor, at last revealed by the raising fire. One of many similar carvings throughout, the heritage of a people long since exiled. From every space inside the temple, the crashing of waves on the shore far below whispered or roared. There was nothing to absorb the sound, to soften it. Great, sprawling rooms and courtyards where there should have been altars and statues and gardens of reflection were wholly empty, the smoke of her fire still lingering. Good. Fire could destroy, but also cleanse. She crept across the darkened temple complex grounds to where the innermost, holiest of sanctuaries sprawled to the lip of the sea. Golden light leaked onto the rocky ground before the inner sanctum steps, light from the now eternally burning vats of flames to honor Brandon's gift. Still clothed in black, Aelin was little more than a shadow as she dimmed those fires to sleepy, murmuring embers and entered the heart of the temple. A great sea wall had been built to push back the wrath of storms from the stone itself, but even then the space was damp, the air thick with brine. Aelin cleared the massive antechamber and strode between the 2 fat pillars that framed the inner sanctuary. At its far end, open to the wrath of the sea beyond, arose the massive black rock. It was smooth as glass, no doubt from the reverent hands that had touched it over the millennia, and perhaps as big as a farmer's market wagon. It jutted upward, overhanging the sea, and starlight bounced off its pocked surface as Aelin extinguished every flame but the sole white candle fluttering in the center of the rock. The temple carvings revealed no word marks or further messages from the little folk, just swirls and stags. She'd have to do this the old-fashioned way then. Aelin mounted the small stairs that allowed pilgrims to gaze upon the sacred rock, then stepped onto it. Chapter 15. Oh. Oh, God. Y'all, my allergies are acting up so bad. it's the drop in temperature, and then it's the storms that we've been having over the past couple days, because I'm just like a mess. Ugh. Chapter 15. The sea seemed to pause. Aelin tugged the word key from her jacket, letting it rest between her breasts as she took a seat on the overhanging lip of the stone and peered out into the night-veiled sea, and waited. The sliver of crescent moon was beginning to descend when a deep male voice said behind her, "You look younger than I thought." Who the fuck is that? Aelin stared at the sea, even as her stomach tightened. But just as good-looking, right? She did not hear any footsteps, but the voice was definitely closer as he said, "At least my daughter was right about your humility. Funny, she never implied you had a sense of humor." A whisper of wind to her right, then long, muscled legs beneath ancient armor appeared beside hers, sandaled feet dangling into the surf. She finally dared to turn her head, finding that armor continued to a powerful male body, and a broad-boned, handsome face. He might have fooled anyone into thinking he was flesh and blood, were it not for the pale glimmer of blue light along his edges. Aelin bowed her head slightly to Brandon. Oh! Damn! A half-smile was his only acknowledgement, his red-gold hair shifting in the moonlight. "A brutal but efficient battle," he said. She shrugged. "I was told to come to this temple. I found it occupied, so I unoccupied it. You're welcome." His lips twitched toward a smile. "I cannot stay long. But you're going to manage to cram in as many cryptic warnings as you can, right?" Brandon's brows rose, his brandy-colored eyes crinkling with amusement. "I had my friends send you a message to come for a reason, you know." "Oh, I'm sure of it. She wouldn't have risked reclaiming the temple otherwise. But first, tell me about Maeve." She'd had enough of waiting until they dumped their message into her lap. She had her own goddamn questions. Brandon's mouth tightened. "Specify what you need to know." "Can she be killed?" The king's head whipped toward her. "She's old. Heir of Terrasen. She was old when I was a child. Her plans are far-reaching. I know. But will she die if I shove a blade into her heart? Cut off her head?" A pause. "I don't know." "What?" Brandon shook his head. "I don't know. All Fae may be killed, yet she has outlived even our extended lifespans, and her power, no one really understands her power. But you journeyed with her to get the keys back. I do not know, but she long feared my flame, and yours." "She's not Valg, is she?" A low laugh. "No. As cold as one, but no." Brandon's edges began to blur a bit, but he saw the question in her eyes and nodded for her to go on. Aelin swallowed, her jaw clenching a bit as she forced out a breath. "Does the power ever get easier to handle?" Brandon's gaze softened a fraction. "Yes and no. How it impacts your relationships with those around you becomes harder than managing the power, yet it is tied to it as well. Magic is no easy gift in any form, yet fire. We burn, not just within our magic, but also in our very souls, for better or worse." His attention flicked to Goldrin, peeking over her shoulder, and he laughed in quiet surprise. "Is the beast in the cave dead?" "No, but he told me that he misses you and you should pay him a visit. He's lonely out there." Brandon chuckled again. We would have had fun together, you and I. I'm starting to wish they'd sent you to deal with me instead of your daughter. The sense of humor must skip a generation." Perhaps it was the wrong thing to say, for that sense of humor instantly faded from that beautiful tan face, those brandy eyes going cold and hard. Brandon gripped her hand, but his fingers went through hers, right down to the stone itself. "The lock, heir of Terrasen. I summoned you here for it. In the stone marshes, there lies a sunken city. The lock is hidden there. It is needed to bind the keys back into the broken word gate. It is the only way to get them back into that gate and seal it permanently. My daughter begs you, what lock? Find the lock. Where in the stone marshes? It's not exactly a small..." Brandon was gone. Aelin scowled and shoved the amulet of Orinth back into her shirt. "Of course there's a goddamn lock," she muttered. She groaned a bit as she eased to her feet and frowned at the night-dark sea crashing mere yards away. At the ancient queen across it, readying her armada. Aelin stuck out her tongue. "Well, if Maeve wasn't already poised to attack, that'll certainly set her off," Adian drawled from the shadows of a nearby pillar. Aelin stiffened, hissing. Her cousin grinned at her, his teeth moon-white. You think I didn't know you had something else up your sleeve for why we took back this temple? Or that this spring in Rifthold taught me nothing about your tendency to be planning a few things at once? She rolled her eyes, stepping off the sacred stone and stomping down the stairs. I assume you heard everything? Brandon even winked at me before he vanished. She clenched her jaw. Adian leaned his shoulder against the carved pillar. A lock, eh? And when precisely were you going to inform us about this new shift in direction? She stalked up to him. When I reading felt like it, that's when. And it's not a shift in direction. Not yet. Allies remain our goal, not cryptic commands from dead royals. Adian just smiled. A ripple in the murky shadows of the temple snagged her attention, and Aelin heaved a sigh. You two are honestly insufferable. Lysandra flapped onto the top of a nearby statue and clicked her beak rather saucily. Adian slid an arm around Aelin's shoulders, guiding her back toward the ramshackle residence within the compound. New court, new traditions, you said. Even for you. Starting with fewer schemes and secrets that take years off my life every time you do a grand reveal. Though I certainly enjoyed that new trick with the ash. Very artistic. Aelin jabbed him in the side. Do not! The words halted as footsteps crunched on the dry earth from the nearby court. The wind drifted by, carrying a scent they knew too well. Valg. A powerful one, if he'd walked through her wall of flame. Aelin drew Goldrin as Adian's own blade whined softly, the sword of Orinth gleaming like freshly forged steel in the moonlight. Lysandra remained aloft, ducking deeper into the shadows. Sold out or shit poor luck, Adian murmured. Likely both, Aelin muttered back as the figure appeared through two pillars. He was stocky, slightly overweight, not at all the impossible beauty that the Valg princess preferred when inhabiting a human body, but the inhuman reek, even with that collar on his wide neck, so much stronger than usual. Of course, Brandon couldn't have been bothered to warn her. The Valg stepped into the light of the sacred braziers? The thoughts eddied from her head as she saw his face. And Aelin knew that Adian had been right. Her actions tonight had sent a message, an outright declaration of her location. Erwin had been waiting for this meeting far longer than a few hours, and the Valg King knew both sides of her history, for it was the chief overseer of Endervere who now grinned at them all. Damn. She still dreamt of him, of that ruddy, common face leering at her, at the other women in Endervere, of his laughter when she was stripped to the waist and whipped in the open, then left to hang from her shackles in the bitter cold or blazing sun, of his smile as she was shoved into those lightless pits, the grin still stretching wide when they removed her from them days or weeks later. Goldrin's hilt became slimy in her hand. Flame instantly burned along the fingers of her other. She cursed Lorcan for stealing back the golden ring, for taking away that one bit of immunity, of redemption. Adian was glancing between them, reading the recognition in her eyes. The overseer of Endervere sneered at her. Aren't you going to introduce us, slave? The utter stillness that crept over her cousin's face told her enough about what he'd pieced together, along with the glance at the faint scars on her wrists where the shackles had been. Adian slid a step between them, no doubt reading every sound and shadow and scent to see if the man was alone, estimating how hard and long they'd have to fight their way out of here. Lysandra flapped to another pillar, poised to shift and pounce at a single word. Aelin tried to rally the swagger that had shielded and bluffed her way out of everything, but all she saw was the man dragging those women behind the buildings. All she heard was the slam of that iron grate over her lightless pit. All she smelled were the salts in the blood and the unwashed bodies. All she felt was the burning, wet slide of blood down her ravaged back. Not my Sam to the rescue. I will not be afraid. I will not be afraid. Have they run out of pretty boys in the kingdoms for you to wear? Adian drawled, buying them time to figure out the odds. Come a bit closer, the overseer smirked, and we'll see if you make a better fit, General. Adian let out a low chuckle, the sword of Orinth lifting a bit higher. I don't think you'd walk away from it. And it was the sight of that blade, her father's blade, The blade of her people. Aylin lifted her chin, and the flames encircling her left hand flickered brighter. The overseer's watery blue eyes slid to hers, narrowing with amusement. Too bad you didn't have that little gift when I put you in those pits, or when I painted the earth with your blood. A low snarl was Adian's answer, but Aylin made herself smile. It's late. I just trounced your soldiers. Let's get this chat out of the way so I can have some rest. The overseer's lip curled. You'll learn proper manners soon enough, girl. All of you will. The amulet between her breasts seemed to grumble, a flicker of raw, ancient power. Aylin ignored it, shutting out any thought of it. If Erowyn got one whiff that she possessed what he so desperately sought. The overseer again opened his mouth. She attacked. Fire blasted him into the nearest wall, surging down his throat, through his ears, up his nose. Flame that did not burn. Flame that was mere light, blindingly white. The overseer roared, thrashing as her magic swept into him, melded with him. But there was nothing inside to grab onto. No darkness to burn out. No remaining ember to breathe life into. Only... Aylin reeled back, magic vanishing and knees buckling as if struck. Her head gave a throb, and nausea roiled in her gut. She knew that feeling, that taste. Iron, as if the man's core was made of it. And that oily, hideous aftertaste. Wordstone. The demon inside the overseer let out a choked laugh. What are collars and rings compared to a soldier's heart? And a heart of iron and wordstone to replace the coward's heart beating within. Why, she breathed, I was planted here to demonstrate what is waiting should you and your court visit Morath. Aylin slammed her fire into him, scouring his insides, striking that core of pure darkness inside. Again. The overseer kept roaring, but Aylin kept attacking until she vomited all over the stones between them. Adian hauled her upright. Aylin lifted her head. She'd burned off his clothes, but not touched the skin. And there, pulsing against his ribs as if it were a fist punching through, was his heart. It slammed into his skin, stretching bone and flesh. Ugh. Aylin flinched back. Adian threw a hand in her path as the overseer arched in agony, his mouth open in a silent scream. Lysandra flapped down from the rafters, shifting into leopard form at their side and snarling. Again, that fist struck from inside, and then bones snapped, punching outward, ripping through muscle and skin as if his chest cavity were the petals of a blooming flower. There was nothing inside, no blood, no organs, only a mighty, ageless darkness, and two flickering golden embers at its core. Not embers, eyes. Simmering with ancient malice, they narrowed in acknowledgement and pleasure. What the fuck is going on? What the fuck is going on? It took every ounce of her fire to steel her spine, to tilt her head at a jaunty angle and drawl. At least you know how to make a good What? Huh? Who? Who? Erowyn? What? Huh? I just got the wind knocked out of me. What the fuck is going... Are we doing this now? Chapter 16. I'm so confused. What is going on? What is going on? Oh my god. Blowing my nose with this fucking piercing sends me... Not in a good way. Chapter 16. The overseer spoke, but the voice was not his, and the voice was not Parrington's. It was a new voice, an old voice, a voice from a different world and lifetime, a voice that fed on screams and blood and pain. Well, that's dramatic. Her magic thrashed against the sound, and even Adian swore softly, still trying to herd her behind him. But Aylin stood fast against the darkness, peering at them from the man's cracked chest, and she knew that even if his body hadn't been irreparably broken, there was nothing left inside him to save anyway, nothing worth saving to begin with. She flexed her fingers at her sides, rallying her magic against the darkness that coiled and swirled inside the man's shattered chest. Erwin said, "I would think gratitude is in order, heir of Brannan." She flicked her brows up, tasting smoke in her mouth. "Easy," she murmured to her magic. Careful. She'd have to be so careful he did not see the amulet around her neck, sense the presence of the final word key inside. With the first two already in his possession, if Erwin suspected that the third key was in this temple, and that his utter dominance over this land and all others was close enough to grab, she had to keep him distracted. So Aelin snorted. "Why should I thank you, exactly?" The embers of eyes slid upward, as if surveying the hollow body of the overseer. "For this small warning present, for ridding the world of one more bit of vermin, and for making you realize how fruitless standing against me will be," that voice whispered right into her skull. She slammed fire outward in a blind maneuver, stumbling back into Adian at the caress in that hideous, beautiful voice. From her cousin's pale face, she knew he'd heard it too, felt its violating touch. Erwin chuckled. "I'm surprised you tried to save him first, given what he did to you at Endovir. My prince could scarcely stand to be inside his mind. It was already so vile. Do you find pleasure in deciding who shall be saved and who is beyond it? So easy to become a little burning god." Nausea, true and cold, struck her. But it was Adian who smirked. "I think you'd have better things to do, Erwin, than taunt us in the dead hours of the morning. Or is this all just a way to make yourself feel better about Dorian Havillard slipping through your nets?" The darkness hissed. Adian squeezed her shoulder in silent warning. End it, now, before Erwin might strike, before he could sense that the word key he sought was mere feet away. So Aelin inclined her head to the force staring at them through flesh and bone. "I suggest you rest and gather your strength, Erwin," she purred, winking at him with every shred of bravado she felt in her. "You're going to need it." A low laugh, as flames started to flicker in her eyes, heating her blood with welcome, delicious warmth. "Indeed, especially considering the plans I have for the would-be king of Ardalan." Aelin's heart stopped. "Perhaps you should have told your lover to disguise himself before he snatched Dorian Havillard out of Rifthold." Those eyes narrowed to slits. "What was his name?" "Oh, yes," Erwin breathed as if someone had whispered it to him. "Prince Rowan Whitethorn of Dorinel. What a prize he shall be." Aelin plummeted down into fire and darkness, refusing to yield 1 inch to the terror creeping over her. Erwin crooned, "My hunters are already tracking them, and I'm going to hurt them, Aelin Galathinius. I'm going to hone them into my most loyal generals, starting with your Fey Prince." A battering ram of hottest blue slammed into that pit in the man's chest cavity, into those burning eyes. Aelin kept her magic focused on that chest, on the bones and flesh melting away, leaving only that heart of iron and wordstone untouched. Her magic flowed around it like a stream, surging past a rock, burning his body, that thing inside him. "Don't bother saving any part of him," Adian snarled softly. Her magic roaring out of her, Aelin glanced over his shoulder. Lysandra was now in human form beside Adian, teeth gritted at the overseer. The look cost her. She heard Adian shout before she felt Erwin's punch of darkness crash into... Listen to... Y'all, I don't like this. Y'all, what? She heard Adian shout before she felt Erwin's punch of darkness crash into her chest. Oh, okay. Felt the air snap against her as she was hurled back. Felt her body bark against the stone wall before the agony of that darkness really sank in. Her breath stalled. Her blood halted. Get up. Erwin laughed softly as Adian was instantly at her side, dragging her to her feet as her mind, her body, tried to reorder itself. Aelin threw out her power again, letting Adian believe she allowed him to hold her upright simply because she forgot to step away, not because her knees were shaking so violently she wasn't sure she could stand. But her hand remained steady, at least. I thought Erwin was taking Lysandra. I thought she was taking Lysandra. That's what I thought was happening, but I read that wrong. The temple around them shuddered at the force of the power she hurled out of herself. Dust and kernels of debris trickled from the ceiling high above. Columns swayed like drunken friends. Adian's and Lysandra's faces glowed in the blue light of her flame, their features wide-eyed but set with solid determination and wrath. She leaned farther into Adian as her magic roared from her, his grip tightening at her waist. Each heartbeat was a lifetime. Each breath ached. But the Overseer's body at last ripped apart under her power, the dark shields around it yielding to her. And some small part of her realized that it only did so when Erwin deigned to leave, those amused, ember-like eyes guttering into nothing. When the man's body was only ashes, Aelin reeled back her magic, cocooned her heart in it. She gripped Adian's arm, trying not to breathe too loudly, lest he hear the rasp of her battered lungs, realize how hard that single plume of darkness had hit. A heavy thud echoed through the silent temple as the lump of iron and wordstone fell. That was the cost, Erwin's plan, to realize that the only mercy she might offer her court would be death. If they were ever captured, he'd make her watch as they were all carved apart and filled with his power, make her look into their faces when he'd finished and find no trace of their souls within. Then he'd get to work on her. And Rowan and Dorian, if Erwin was hunting them at this very moment, if he learned that they were in Skull's Bay and how hard he'd actually struck her. Aelin's flames banked to a quiet ember, and she finally found enough strength in her legs to push away from Adian's grip. "We need to be on that ship before dawn, Aelin," he said. If Erwin wasn't bluffing, Aelin only nodded. They had to get to Skull's Bay as fast as the winds and currents could carry them. But as she turned toward the archway out of the temple, heading for the archives, she glanced at her chest, utterly untouched, though Erwin's power had hit her like a hurled spear. He'd missed. By 3 inches, Erwin had narrowly missed hitting the amulet, and possibly sensing the word key inside it. Yet the blow still reverberated against her bones in brutal ripples, a reminder that she might be the heir of fire, but Erwin was the king of darkness. Well, that was dramatic. Oh, God. Chapter 17. Y'all, I don't want to read this. I don't want to read this part. I don't want to read this. I'm scared that Astrid is actually gonna die. I'm scared she's gonna die. I'm scared for her life. I'm scared for her life, y'all. I'm so scared for her life. Okay, but if she does die, Manon and the 13 are gonna come back and they're gonna rip everyone to shreds. So, what kind of makeup did you use? Oh no! No! Don't ask me! Don't ask me that question! No! Oh. No! This is how much I eat out, y'all. I need to stop. No. Don't ask me that. Oh, I'm already sweating. Oh my god. Okay, I can do this. It's just one person, y'all. It's just one person. I can get through it. It's just one person. This is the first death we've had in a while. It's overdue. It is overdue. We are overdue for a death. And you know what? Astrid will be a martyr. And Manon and the 13, well, and the 12, will come back. And they're going to rip everyone that had anything to do with it a new one. So, no. Oh, God. Oh, God. Oh, God. I don't have my hoodie. But I do have this guy today. So, oh. Okay, he's gonna go in the passenger seat. He's in the passenger seat and he is waiting. I have waterproof mascara on. Yes, I do. I have waterproof mascara. My eyeliner, however, is not waterproof. And y'all, I have to go pick up an order from Target after this. And so I'm like, drink water. Oh my god. Oh my god. Okay. I'm gonna have to go pick up an order from Target after this. I'm gonna look like a psychopath if all my eyeliner is down here. Oh god. Okay. Let's go. Let's just. Okay. Chapter 17. Oh god. I'm so scared. I'm sorry. Oh my god. Madden Blackbeak watched the black skies above Morath bleed to rotted gray on the last morning of Astrin's life. She didn't get her out? She didn't get her out? Is she dumb? She had not slept the entirety of the night, had not eaten or drank, had done nothing but sharpened Windcleaver in the frigid openness of the wyvern's eyrie. Over and over she had honed that blade, leaning against Abraxas's warm side until her fingers were too stiff with cold to grip sword or stone. Her grandmother had ordered Astrin locked in the deepest bowels of the keep's dungeon, so heavily guarded that escape was impossible. Okay, but escape is going to become possible. It's going to become possible. Right? Or rescue. Manon had toyed with the idea for the first few hours after the sentence had been given, but to rescue Astrin would be to betray her matron, her clan. Is that not worth it? Her mistake. It was on her own mistake, her own damn choices that had led to this. And if she stepped out of line again, the rest of the 13 would be put down. She was lucky she hadn't been stripped of her title as wing leader. At least she could still lead her people, to protect them. Better than allowing someone like Iskra to take command. The Farian Gap Legion's assault on Rifthold under Iskra's command had been sloppy, chaotic. Not the systematic, careful sacking Manon would have planned had they asked her. It had made no sense now. It made no sense. What the fuck am I reading? I'm scared. I'm sorry. It made no difference now whether the city was in full or half ruin. It didn't alter Astrin's fate. So there was little to be done, other than to sharpen her ancient blade and memorize the words of request. Manon would have to utter them at the right moment. This last gift she could give her cousin. Her only gift. Not the long, slow torture and beheading that was typical of a witch execution, but the swift mercy of Manon's own blade. Boots scuffed on stone and crunched the hay littering the airy floor. Manon knew that step. Knew it as well as Astrin's own gait. What? She said to Sorel without looking behind her. Dawn approaches, her third said. Soon to be second. Vesta would become third, and maybe Astrin would at least see that hunter of hers, see the stillborn witchling they'd had together. Never again would Astrin ride the winds. Never again would Astrin soar on the back of her sky-blue mare. Manon's eyes slid to the wyvern across the eyrie, shifting on her two legs, awake when the others were not, as if she could sense her mistress's doom beckoning with each passing moment. What would become of the mare when Astrin was gone? Manon rose to her feet, Abraxas nudging the backs of her thighs with his snout. She reached down, brushing his scaly head. She didn't know who it was meant to comfort. Her crimson cape, as bloody and filthy as the rest of her, was still clasped at her collarbone. The 13 would become 12. Manon's met... Oh, God. No! Oh, no! Manon met Sorel's gaze, but her third's attention was on Windcleaver, bare in Manon's hand. Her third said, You mean to make the words of request? Manon tried to speak, but she could not open her mouth, so she only nodded. Sorel stared toward the open archway beyond Abraxas. I wish she had the chance to see the wastes. Just once. Manon forced herself to lift her chin. We do not wish. We do not hope. She said to her soon-to-be second. Sorel's eyes snapped to her. Something like hurt flashed there. Manon took the inner blow. She said, We will move on. Adapt. Sorel said quietly, but not weakly, She goes to her death to keep your secrets. It was the closest Sorel had ever come to outright challenge, to resentment. Manon sheathed Windcleaver at her side and strode for the stairwell, unable to meet Abraxas's curious stare. Then she will have served me well as second, and will be remembered for it. Sorel said nothing, so Manon descended into the gloom of Morath to kill her cousin. Oh my god. Y'all, what if the 13... No, hold on. What if the other 11, the 11, so not including Manon, y'all, oh my god, what if they try to rescue Astrid, and in the process, Manon loses her entire 13, and that's when she finally fucking wakes the fuck up, and is like, oh my god, all my friends just died, and I am honestly like, I didn't do anything. I just was obeying orders and following orders and doing this and that, and I just lost all my friends, and that's her turning point. I don't want it to happen. I really don't. All my friends are dead. No, literally. I'm not picking my nose, by the way. I'm fixing this. Fixing my my nose ring. Y'all, I can see it happening. Because I don't think they would let one of their own... I'm just gonna shut up. I'm stalling. That's what I'm doing. I'm stalling. I just brought a whole fucking receipt with me that time. The execution was not to be held in the dungeon. Rather, her grandmother had selected a broad veranda overlooking one of the endless drops into the ravine curled around Morath. Witches were crowded onto the balcony. Crowded, sorry, not crowned. Practically thrumming with bloodlust, the matrons stood before the gathered group, Cressida and the Yellowlegs matron flanked by each of their heirs, all facing the open doors through which Manon and the 13 exited the keep proper. Manon did not hear the murmur of the crowd, did not hear the roaring wind ripping between the high turrets, did not hear the strike of hammers into the forges of the valley below, not when her attention went to Astrid, on her knees before the matrons. She too was facing Manon, still in her riding leathers, her golden hair limp and knotted, flecked with blood. She lifted her face. It was only fair, Manon's grandmother drawled, the crowd silencing. For Iskra Yellowlegs, that also avenged the 4 sentinels slaughtered on your watch. 3 blows apiece for each of the sentinels killed. I can't wait for her to... I cannot wait for her to... God! I don't even want to say that word because I don't want to get on TikTok's bad side. 12 blows total. But from the cuts and bruises on Astrid's face, the split lip, from the way she cradled her body as she bent over her knees, it had been far more than that. Slowly, Manon looked at Iskra. Cuts marred her knuckles, still raw from the beating she'd given Astrid in the dungeon. While Manon had been upstairs, brooding, Manon opened her mouth, her rage a living thing thrashing in her gut, her blood, but Astrid spoke instead. Be glad to know, Manon, her second rasped with a faint, cocky smile, that she had to chain me up to beat me. Iskra's eyes flashed. You still screamed, bitch, when I whipped you. I can't wait for her to... I can't wait. Oh, y'all, this is not happening. Enough, Manon's grandmother cut in, waving a hand. Manon barely heard the order. They had whipped her sentinel like some underling, like some mortal beast. Someone snarled, low and vicious to her right. The breath went out of her as she found Sorrel, unmovable rock, unfeeling stone, baring her teeth at Iskra, at those assembled here. Manon's grandmother stepped forward, brimming with displeasure. Behind Manon, the 13 were a silent, unbreakable wall. Astrid began scanning their faces, and Manon realized her second understood that it was the last time she'd do so. Blood shall be paid with blood, Manon's grandmother and the Yellowlegs matron said in unison, reciting from their eldest rituals. Manon steeled... My heart's beating so fast, y'all. My heart's beating so fast. Manon steeled her spine, waiting for the right moment. Any witch who wishes to extract blood in the name of Zelta Yellowlegs may come forward. Iron nails slid out from the hands of the entire Yellowlegs coven. Astrid only stared at the 13, her bloody face unmoved, eyes clear. The Yellowlegs matron said, "Form the line." Manon pounced. "I invoke the right of execution." Everyone froze. Manon's grandmother's face went pale with rage, but the other 2 matrons, even Yellowlegs, just waited. Manon said, head held high, I claim the right to my second's head. Blood shall be paid with blood, but at my sword's edge she is mine, and so shall her death be mine. For the first time Astrid's mouth tightened, eyes gleaming. Yes, she understood the only gift Manon could give her, the only honor left. It was Cressida Blueblood who cut in before the other two matrons could speak. For saving my daughter's life, Wing Leader, it shall be granted. The Yellowlegs matron whipped her head to Cressida, a retort on her lips, but it was too late. The words had been spoken, and the rules were to be obeyed at any cost. Say psych right now, say psych right now, say psych right now. There has to be, I'm trying to think. There has to be like a last minute thing that she can do. Like a last minute like a trick that she can do. This isn't like a Ned Stark type of beheading, right? This is a rescued at the last second beheading. This is literally like in the last 30 seconds beheading, right? That they like, oh my god. No, this isn't. I'm gonna throw up. The Crochin's red cape fluttering behind her in the wind, Manon dared a look at her grandmother. Only hatred glowed in those ancient eyes. Hatred, and a flicker of satisfaction that Astrid would be ended, and after decades of being deemed an unfit second. But at least this death was now hers to give. And in the east, slipping over the mountains like molten gold, the sun began to rise. 100 years she'd had with Astrid. She'd always thought they'd have 100 more. Manon said softly to Sorel, "Turn her around. My second shall see the dawn one last time." Sorel obediently stepped forward, pivoting Astrid to face the high witches, the crowd by the rail, and the rare sunrise piercing through Morath's gloom. Blood soaked through the back of her second's leathers, and yet Astrid knelt, shoulders square and head high, as she looked not at the dawn, but at Manon herself, while she stalked around her second to take a place a few feet before the matrons. "Sometime before breakfast, Manon," her grandmother said from a few feet behind. Manon drew Windcleaver, the blade singing softly as it slid free of... Hold on. My eyes are trying to skip to the end of the page, and I don't want that. Manon drew Windcleaver, the blade singing softly as it slid free of the sheath. Okay, anytime now. 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 Manon drew Windcleaver, the blade singing softly as it slid free of its sheath. The sunlight gilded the balcony as Astrid whispered so softly that only Manon could hear. Bring my body back to the cabin." Oh god, I'm gonna throw up. Oh no. Okay. Something in Manon's chest broke so violently that she wondered if it was possible for no one to have heard it. Manon lifted her sword. All it would take was one word from Astrid, and she could save her own hide. Spill Manon's secrets, her betrayals, and she'd walk free. Yet her second uttered no other word. And Manon understood in that moment that there were forces greater than obedience and discipline and brutality. Understood that she had not been born soulless. She had not been born without a heart. For they were both, begging her not to swing that blade. Manon looked to the 13, standing around Astrid in a half circle. One by one they lifted 2 fingers to their brows. A murmur went through the crowd, the gesture not to honor a high witch, but a witch queen. There had not been a queen of witches in 500 years either, among the Crochins or the Iron Teeth, not one. Forgiveness shone in the faces of her 13. Forgiveness and understanding and loyalty that was not blind obedience, but forged in pain and battle, in shared victory and defeat, forged in hope for a better life, a better world. At last Manon found Astrid's gaze, tears now rolling down her second's face, not from fear or pain, but in farewell. 100 years, and yet Manon wished she had more time. For a heartbeat, she thought of, oh my god, again. She thought of that sky blue mare in the Eyrie, the wyvern that would wait for a rider who would never return. out of a green rocky land spreading to the western sea. Y'all. Oh my god, why would she put that in there? Why would she put that in there? Why would she put that in there? She didn't have to say that. She didn't have to say that. Oh god. Hand trembling, Astrid pressed her fingers to her brow and extended them. Bring our people home, Manon, she breathed. Manon angled wing cleaver, readying for the strike. The black-beaked matron snapped. Be done with it, Manon. Manon met Sorel's eyes, then Astrid's, and Manon gave the 13 her final order. Run. Then Manon Blackbeak whirled and brought Windcleaver down upon her grand... Ah! What?! Oh my... What the fuck?! What?! She did what?! Oh my god, they're all dead. Bro, they're dead. What the fuck? What the fuck? Huh? Oh my god. Chapter 18. Oh my god. Manon saw only the flash of her grandmother's rested iron teeth, the glimmer of her iron nails as she raised them to ward against the sword, but too late. Manon slashed Windcleaver down, a blow that would have cut most men in half, yet her grandmother darted back fast enough that the sword sliced down her torso, ripping fabric and skin as it cut between her breasts in a shallow line. Blue blood sprayed, but the matron was moving, blocking Manon's next blow with her iron nails, iron so hard that Windcleaver bounced off. Manon did not look to see if the 13 obeyed, but Astrid was roaring and shouting to stop. The cries grew more distant, then echoed as if she were now inside the hall, being dragged away. No sounds of pursuit, as if the onlookers were too stunned. Good. Iskra and Petra had swords out, iron teeth down as they stepped between their matrons and Manon, herding their 2 high witches away. The Blackbeak matron's coven lunged forward, only to be halted by a hand. Stay back, her grandmother commanded, panting as Manon circled her. Blue blood leaked down her grandmother's front. An inch closer, and she would have been dead. Dead. Her grandmother bared her rusted teeth. She's mine. She jerked her chin at Manon. We do this the ancient way. Manon's stomach roiled, but she sheathed her sword. A flick of her wrists had her nails out, and a snap of her jaw had her teeth descending. Let's see how good you are, wing leader, her grandmother hissed, and attacked. Manon had never seen her grandmother fight, never trained with her, and some small part of Manon wondered if it was because her grandmother did not want others to know how skilled she was. Manon could hardly move fast enough to avoid the nails ripping into her face, her neck, her gut, yielding step after step after step. She only had to do this long enough to buy the 13 time to get to the skies. Her grandmother slashed for the cheek, and Manon blocked the blow with an elbow, slamming the joint down hard into her grandmother's forearm. The witch barked in pain, and Manon spun out to reach, circling again. It is not so easy to strike now, is it, Manon Blackbeak? Her grandmother panted, as they surveyed each other. No one around them dared move. The 13 had vanished, every last one of them. She almost sagged with relief, now to keep her grandmother occupied long enough to avoid her giving the onlookers the order to pursue. So much easier with a blade, the weapon of those cowardly humans, her grandmother seethed. With the teeth, the nails, you have to mean it. They lunged for each other, some fundamental part of her cracking with every slash and swipe and block. They darted apart again. As pathetic as your mother, her grandmother spat. Perhaps you'll die like her too, with my teeth at your throat. Her mother, whom she'd killed coming out of, who had died at all. who had died birthing her. For years I tried to train her weakness out of you. Her grandmother spat blue blood onto the stones. For the good of the Iron Teeth, I made you into a force of nature, a warrior equal to none, and this is how you repay me. Manon didn't let the words unnerve her. She went for the throat, only to feint and slash. Her grandmother barked in pain, genuine pain, as Manon's claws shredded her shoulder. Blood showered her hand, flesh clinging to her nails. Manon staggered back, bile burning at her throat. She saw the blow coming, but still didn't have time to stop it as her grandmother's right hand slashed across her belly. Leather, cloth, and skin ripped. Manon screamed. Blood, hot and blue, rushed out of her before her grandmother had darted back. Manon shoved a hand against her abdomen, pushing against the shredded skin. Blood dribbled through her fingers, splattering onto the stones. High above, a wyvern roared. Abraxas! The black-beaked matron laughed, flicking Manon's blood off her nails. I'm going to dice your wyvern into tiny pieces and feed him to the hounds. Despite the agony in her belly, Manon's vision honed. Not if I kill you first. Her grandmother chuckled, still circling, assessing. You are stripped of your title as wing leader. You are stripped of your title as heir. Step after step, closer and closer, an adder looping around its prey. From this day you are Manon, witch killer. Manon, kinslayer. The words pelted her like stones. Manon backed toward the balcony rail, pushing against the wound in her stomach to keep the blood in. The crowd parted like water around them. Just a little longer. Just a minute or two. Her grandmother paused, blinking toward the open doors as if realizing the 13 had vanished. Manon attacked again before she could give the order to pursue. Swipe, lunge, slash, duck, they moved in a whirlwind of iron and blood and leather. But as Manon twisted away, the wounds in her stomach gave more, and she stumbled. Her grandmother didn't miss a beat. She struck, not with her nails or teeth, but with her foot. The kick to Manon's stomach set her screaming, a roar again answered by Abraxas, locked high above, soon to die, as she would. She prayed the 13 would spare him, let him join them whenever they would flee. Manon slammed into the stone rail of the balcony and crumpled to the black tiles. Blue blood leaked from her, staining the thighs of her pants. Her grandmother slowly approached, panting. Manon grabbed the balcony rail, hauling herself to her feet one last time. Do you want to know a secret, kinslayer? Her grandmother breathed. Manon slumped against the balcony rail, the drop below endless and a relief. They'd take her to the dungeons, either use her for Erwin's breeding or torture her until she begged for death. Maybe both. Her grandmother spoke so softly that even Manon could barely hear over her own gasps for air. As your mother labored to push you out, she confessed who your father was. She said you would be the one who broke the curse, who saved us. She said your father was a rare-born Crochin prince. Oh, what? And she said that your mixed blood would be the key. Oh, damn. Her grandmother lifted her nails to her mouth and licked off Manon's blue blood. No. So you've been a kinslayer your whole life, her grandmother purred, hunting down those Crochins, your relatives. When you were a witchling, your father searched the lands for you. He never stopped loving your mother. Loving her, she spat, and loving you. So I killed him. Manon gazed at the drop below, the death that beckoned. His despair was delicious when I told him what I'd done to her, what I would make you into. Not a child of peace, but war. Maid. Manon's iron nails chipped into the dark stone of the balcony rail, and then her grandmother said the words that broke her. Do you know why that Crochin was spying in the Farian Gap this spring? She'd been sent to find you. After 116 years of searching, they had finally learned the identity of their dead prince's lost child. Oh, don't tell me that was her aunt. Her grandmother's smile was hideous in its absolute triumph. Manon willed strength in her arms, to her legs. Her name was Rhiannon? I don't know. After the last Crochin queen. And she was your half-sister. Oh no! Oh, bro! She confessed it to me upon our tables. She thought it'd save her life. And when she saw what you had become, she chose to let the knowledge die with her. Oh. I am a Blackbeak, Manon rasped, blood choking her words. Her grandmother took a step, smiling as she crooned. You are a Crochin, the last of their royal bloodline, with the death of your sister at your own hand. You are a Crochin queen. Absolute silence from the witches gathered. Her grandmother reached for her. And you're going to die like one by the time I'm finished with you. Manon didn't let her grandmother's nails touch her. A boom sounded nearby. Manon used the strength she'd gathered in her arms, her legs, to hurl herself onto the stone ledge of the balcony and roll off it into the open air. Damn. Damn. Air and rock and wind and blood. Manon slammed into a warm, leathery hide, screaming as pain from her wounds blacked out her vision. Above, somewhere far away, her grandmother was shrieking orders. Manon dug her nails into the leathery hide, burying her claws deep. Beneath her, a bark of discomfort she recognized. Abraxas. She held firm, and he embraced the pain as he banked to the side, swerving out of Morath's shadow. She felt them around her. Manon managed to open her eyes, flicking the clear lid against the wind into place. Etta and Briar, her shadows, were now flanking her. She knew they'd been there, waiting in the shadows with their wyverns, had heard every one of those damning last words. The others have flown ahead. We were sent to retrieve you. Etta, the eldest of the sisters, shouted over the roar of wind. Your wound, it's shallow, Manon snapped, forcing the pain aside to focus on the task at hand. She was on Abraxas's neck, the saddle a few feet behind her. One by one, every breath in agony, she released her nails from his skin and slid toward the saddle. He evened out in his flight, offering smooth air to buckle herself into the harness. Blood leaked from the gouges in her belly. Soon the saddle was slick with it. Behind them, several roars set the mountains trembling. We can't let them get to the others, Manon managed to say. Briar, black hair streaming behind her, swept in closer. 6 yellow legs are on her tail, from Iskra's personal coven, closing in fast. With a score to settle, they'd no doubt been given free rein to slaughter them. Manon surveyed the peaks and ravines of the mountains around them. 2 apiece, she ordered. The Shadow's black wyverns were enormous, skilled at stealth, but devastating in a fight. Etta, you drive 2 to the west. Briar, you slam the other 2 to the east. Leave the last 2 to me. No sign of the rest of the 13 in the gray clouds or mountains. Good. They had gotten away. It was enough. You kill them. Then you find the others, Manon ordered, an arm draped over her wound. But, Wingleader, the title most sapped her with, but Manon barked, That's an order. The Shadows bowed their heads. Then, as if sharing one mind, one heart, they banked to either direction, peeling away from Manon like petals in the wind. Blue hounds on ascent, 4 yellow legs split from their group to deal with each shadow. The 2 in the center flew faster, harder, spreading apart to close in on Manon, her vision blurred. Not a good sign. Not a good sign at all. She breathed to Abraxas. Let's make it a final stand worthy of a song. He bellowed in answer. The yellow legs swept near enough for Manon to count their weapons. A battle cry shattered from the one on her right. Manon dug her left heel into Abraxas' side. Like a shooting star, he blasted down toward the peaks of the ashy mountains. The yellow legs dove with them. Manon aimed for a ravine, running. Sorry, my nose is so runny. Through the spine of the mountain range, her vision flashing black and white and foggy. A chill crept into her bones. The walls of the ravine closed around them like the maw of a mighty beast, and she pulled on the reins once. Abraxas flung out his wings and coasted along the side of the ravine before catching a current and leveling out, flapping like hell through the heart of the crevice? Pillars of stone jutting from the floor like lances. The yellow legs, too ensnared in their bloodlust, their wyverns too large and bulky, balked at the ravine, at the sharp turn. A boom and a screech, and the whole ravine shuddered. Manon swallowed her bark of agony to peer behind. One of the wyverns had panicked, too big for the space, and slammed into a stone column. Broken bone and blood rained down. But the other wyvern had managed to bank, and now sailed toward them, wings so wide they nearly grazed either side of the ravine. Manon panted through her bloody teeth. Fly, Abraxas, at her gentle warrior-hearted mount. And her gentle warrior-hearted mount flew. Manon focused on keeping to the saddle, on keeping the arm pressed against her wound to hold the blood in, keep the lethal cold away. She'd gotten enough injuries to know her grandmother had struck deep and true. The ravine swerved right, and Abraxas took the turn with expert skill. She prayed for the boom and roar of the pursuing wyvern to hit the walls, but none came. But Manon knew these deadly canyons. She'd flown this path countless times on the endless, inane patrols these months. The Yellowlegs, sequestered in the Farian Gap, did not. To the very end, Abraxas, she said. His roar was his only confirmation. One shot. She'd have one shot. Then she could gladly die, knowing the 13 wouldn't be pursued. Not today, at least. Turn after turn, Abraxas hurtled through the ravine, snapping his own tail against the rock to send debris flying into the Yellowleg sentinel. The rider dodged the rocks, her wyvern bobbing on the wind. Closer. Manon needed her closer. She tugged on Abraxas's reins, and he checked his speed. Turn after turn after turn, black rock flashing by, blurring like her own fading vision. The Yellowlegs was near enough to throw a dagger. Manon looked over her shoulder with her failing eyesight in time to see her do just that. Not one dagger, but two, metal gleaming in the dim canyon light. Manon braced herself for the impact of metal and flesh and bone. Abraxas took the final turn as the sentinel hurled her daggers at Manon. A towering, impenetrable wall of black stone arose, mere feet away, but Abraxas soared up, catching the updraft and sailing out of the heart of the ravine, so close Manon could touch the dead-end wall. The two daggers struck the rock where Manon had been moments before, and the Yellowleg sentinel, on her bulky, heavy wyvern, did as well. Rock groaned as wyvern and rider splattered against it and fell to the ravine floor. Panting, her breath a wet, bloody rasp, Manon patted Abraxas' side. Even the motion was feeble. Good, she managed to say. Mountains became small again. Oak-walled spread before her. Trees... the cover of trees might hide her. Oak, she rasped. Manon didn't finish the command before the darkness swept in to claim her. Oh my god. Oh my god. What the hell did I just read? Oh my... You see, I told y'all had nothing to worry about. I knew it. I knew it. Nothing to worry about. What are we reading until? I did almost shit myself, not gonna lie. How many pages is 19? How many pages is 19? Let's see. I think 19 is a little too long. Yeah, 19 is too long. Holy shit. Yeah, no, 19 is too long. And it's in a lone chapter, so it's fine. Oh my god. Jeez. I did not like that. Y'all, how did y'all read? Honestly, how did y'all read A Court of Thorns and Roses and like not shit yourselves every single time you read about someone like either about to die or like dying? I am reading Tower of Dawn. I, however, did not read the chapters that I was supposed to read. I did not. But I will read them. I've been reading Fire and Blood and like trying to get through that. And so I'm reading 3 books at once right now. So I think I overdid it a little bit. So I did not read Tower of Dawn. I've read chapters 1 through 4 and that's it. And I need to read, I think, 4 through 10 right now. I am watching tonight, Caitlin. I'm so excited. I'm excited, but I'm also nervous. Oh, I'm so nervous that they're... So far, everything that I've been seeing, they are fucking things up. Yeah. It's like, I'm excited, but I'm also not excited. No, I know. I am reading Tower of Dawn. I've already read chapters 1 through 4. I just need to read 4 through 10 now. But no, I'm doing the tandem read. Don't worry, I'm not gonna DNF it. I was hopeful too, girl. I really was. House of the Dragon comes out tonight, which is the prequel show to Game of Thrones. And I think they're only covering, they're not doing the entire history of the Targaryens. They're only doing like the civil war that the Targaryens have between each other. But it's good. It's good. But I've already seen a lot of things that I'm not happy with. I think I saw some of the reviewers say that they made some of the Targaryens have a lot of like traits that are solely Daenerys's, which I'm not happy about. I personally, okay, I made a TikTok talking about how much I did not like the way Fire and Blood was written, and I stand by that. But it is an interesting read. Like, the parts that are interesting are interesting. It's just that the way it's written fucking sucks. But it is interesting to read. Like, it is, I mean, yeah. If you're like a hardcore Targaryen stan, you can get through it. Because it has a lot of interesting things and events that take place. But I just wish it was written in a different way. Yes. I don't think you would have fun reading it. Because it's written like a textbook. Like, it's like a textbook about the Targaryens. So there's no like point of views. There's hardly any dialogue. You don't really form connections with the characters. It's just like George R.R. Martin sat down and was like, this and this and this happened, and then this and this and this happened, and then this is who this is, and then this. It's just a lot. It's literally like a history book. Yeah. It literally is. It's just a history book of the Targaryens. That's it. But it does have a lot of interesting things that happen. But I think it would have been amazing if it would have actually been like a book like this, like written like, not written like this, but like with like from a, what is it, third person point of view? No, second person? No, third person? Yeah, where it's just like you get the entire scene laid out and you get the impact of it all with like emotions and feelings. I have not read Game of Thrones. I don't think I will, in all honesty, because I'm not interested in any house except for House Targaryen, maybe House Lannister, only because of Cersei, and that's it. I know that it's a good series, but I don't think that I would personally be too interested in the events because I really only like... Oh, it's me. I'm messing with my cup. I really only like Daenerys, and that's the reason I started watching the show. It's the reason I stayed for the show. I'm not interested in House Stark. I'm not yet. We literally ride for Dany. I've riders for Dany forever. Yeah. I think I'm satisfied just watching the show, except for season 8. Yeah, and I think they try to make her have a relationship with Jorah in the books, if I'm not mistaken. And I love Jorah with my entire heart and soul. I loved his relationship with Daenerys throughout the show. So to preserve that, I do not want to read the books. Because I literally... I'm a House Stark girl. Okay, yeah. Yeah. Of course you would like the books then. I cannot stand House Stark. The only one I liked from House Stark was maybe Sansa. At times I liked Sansa, and then I loved Robb, and that was it. That was just because what's his name is hot. Sansa only. R.I.P. Yes, R.I.P. R.I.P. to my boy. Arya, I like and I admire, but I wouldn't say that I stan her. And then honestly, the way they did her faceless man arc was a bit underwhelming for me. Because like I said, I was only there for Daenerys. No, the Red Wedding is still the wildest piece of media I've ever consumed. Like, the wildest thing, the wildest plot twist, the wildest just shock factor in a show that or a movie that I've ever experienced. Nothing will ever top the Red Wedding and what that made me feel and what that put me through. I feel like they undid a lot of Sansa's they undid a lot of characters' writing in the final season, but they undid a lot of Sansa's writing at the end as well, because I always believed that her and Daenerys would be best friends just because of the fact that they had similar, like, experiences. Like, they were RAPED, and they were held by these horrible men and controlled by these horrible men, and, like, they were just put through the ringer in the beginning. And I feel like they should have been best friends and just, like, been these two powerful women together. But no, because there can never be two powerful women working together. We have to pit them against each other. So they pitted them against each other, and for me it was shitty writing. For me that was shitty writing. Yeah, it was so no, yeah, they did Dany so dirty. My girl would have never. Don't even get me started on the final season. Yeah. But anyway, that's it for today. We will be back Wednesday, and we will be reading more. And hopefully I don't have to go through another roller coaster of emotions from this like I did today, because I literally could not stand it today. I was gonna start fucking crying. Yeah, we're not going to talk about how they destroyed my girl's character. There's a reason Emilia Clarke literally wandered the streets of London in the middle of the night after she read that script. Yeah, I'll never forgive them for what they did. This was nothing. Well, then I guess this was the last few chapters that I read. Oh, God. I can't take it anymore. I feel like it's just one thing after another. God damn it. As long as Manon and her 13 are okay, as long as Aelin and her court are okay. Who am I kidding? That's literally all the characters. Someone's gotta die. So scared. Anyway, I'll see you guys on Sunday. Thank you for watching today. Have a good rest of your Sunday. Good luck to all my peeps that are starting school back up this week. I'm not excited about it, but the grind must continue. We must get through it. We will get through it. Bye. Love y'all.